Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler along with Dan Hill talking money and investing and just educating as we go and having a little bit of fun as we do it, relaxing about money here.
We are relaxed.
We are relaxed. Oh, yeah, I love this new set. Okay,
yes.
This is very, very cool. So if you don't know anything about the new set, find us on Facebook. You can go Investor Coaching Show, Paul Winkler. You ought to be able to find us that way. The podcast as well on the website, paulwinkler.com is where you find all of that good stuff. And because we'll have some visuals. I'll be using. One of the things I'm going to start to incorporate here a little bit. I might draw a couple pictures once in a while.
Okay.
I've got the board. I got the board to do it.
Okay.
Let's. So cryptocurrency is one of the things we hear a lot of people ask about. What do you think about, Paul, Bitcoin, stablecoin, those types of things? And, typically my answer is there was some technology that was developed as a result of it that can be helpful. It can decrease the cost of banking. It can decrease some expenses in the financial industry. But it is not an investment. It's always been alternative currency, maybe at best.
Right.
But it doesn't make a great currency. Many of them don't. Some of them do, and I'll talk about them in just a second. But they don't make a great currency, and the reason being is that you don't want your currency to fluctuate in value. There was a very well-known person that was accepting crypto for the sale of a very large ticket product that he was selling. And the problem there, wanted to be on the cutting edge, accept the crypto for exchange for it and be able to sell you this product. And what happened was, sold a very large value product. I mean, really for an amount of Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden, Bitcoin dropped in value. And he gave away this very expensive thing for a fraction of what it was worth because the crypto had actually fluctuated. And that's the problem you run into is you have to have a stable currency. I can, let's say, sell a TV. I can sell a car. I can sell some kind of an asset and not worry about the value of that asset versus the dollar, because the dollar I can go back and turn around and buy something else that's the equivalent of that in dollars someplace else, and I don't worry about that fluctuation in value. But if we're dealing with crypto, you end up having a situation where, let's say it's a $40,000 item, and the amount of crypto that you use is $40,000 worth, then it doesn't get converted back to dollars, and then crypto goes down in value to $30,000. Now you've sold a $40,000 item for $30,000, and you've just hosed yourself. And that's the issue that you run into. Now, a lot of people buy it because they think it's an investment. And they think, gosh, you know what we need? We need to have a currency that is not controlled by the government. Because we love freedom, and they scream it from the rooftops that freedom is important, and they'll get out there and talk about how great this stuff is. Well, guess what? They just rained on your parade. Check this out right here. Something going on right now.
Major bill designed to create a clear regulatory framework for digital assets could soon be heading to the Senate floor for a full vote in less than 2 hours. The Senate Banking Committee's markup process on the Clarity Act set to begin. Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis is here, and she's the author and champion of that bill. She sits on the Senate Banking Committee.
Nothing like a little regulation to take away your freedom, huh?
She is chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee. Good morning to you. Sounds like we're here. It's going to happen.
That's a fact. We've been working for over 9 months with Democrats trying to get this bill ready for today. It provides a regulatory framework that currently doesn't exist in the digital asset world. It's the Wild West out there.
And you see a lot of this stuff. You see a lot of fraud taking place. Somebody gets kidnapped, and what do they want in ransom? They want Bitcoin and ransom. And, we have a situation where there are a lot of people that are putting a tremendous amount of money into these assets. And they might be doing that as opposed to saving for the retirement. And if they don't save for the retirement, you get down the road 20, 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden now you got a problem. You don't have enough money for retirement. And who is going to support you? Well, you'll vote for that candidate that says they will support you through the what? The government.
Right.
There's a reason to advocate for this.
And that allows fraudsters to operate without a regulatory framework to respond to their illicit activity. It also allows legitimate players to set up shop overseas because they do have regulatory frameworks. This is a way to bring this industry into the fold into the United States, make it strong, robust, and serve the American consumer.
And I kid about it, but that is a big reason a lot of people get involved in this. They get excited about it because the idea is, wow, man, freedom. We got something that's not regulated by the government. But it's not long before the government says, we've got to get our hands around this. We've got to do something with this. We're not going to let it go. And when all of a sudden one of the biggest reasons you bought it goes away, what can happen to the value of the thing that you bought for that particular reason when that reason goes away? I mean, you think about it. It's just, night follows day when it comes down to it. Now, the next question was asked was, how does this affect banks?
Do you think it will damage the banking business?
I don't. In fact, I think it provides them additional financial products that they can offer to their customers.
So let me just explain why he's asking this particular question. Will it damage banks? Can it damage banks? So, the reality of it is that one of the things that was thought to be a big deal going forward is disintermediation. In English, the idea that people will bypass banks and they will just go to this, straight to these other industries for loans and deposits and those types of things, and you won't need the banking industry anymore. Well, the banking industry didn't like that a whole lot, so you got a lot of lobbying that goes on, making sure that the banks stay relevant is the idea right here. Now, what does she say? Well, no, they've got something else they can sell, which the banks are like, yeah, baby, that's good. That's what I'm talking about. We want something else that we can sell to the public. So again, another wrench in the plan going on right there.
I think you'll see a lot of combinations of digital asset companies with traditional banks. We're already seeing some of the big traditional banks create back office functions and digital protocols to accommodate assets that are offered on the blockchain.
Yeah.
So the big banks are already embracing it behind the scenes, but in their public-facing views, they oppose it. I think they just want to get a lead, a heads up. Interestingly, the credit unions support the addition of digital assets, and traditional community banks don't particularly. Right. So we're seeing an odd combination and alignment of pros and cons.
Yeah, so they're basically, no, it's terrible, and then all the time what they're doing is they're preparing for it in the background so that they can benefit from it going forward. That's not unusual, that type of behavior. But the idea being here, though, what was the big benefit? As I talked about, and she mentioned it right there, it was the technology that came out of this whole thing. That was really what it was. Now, there was another thing that I've talked about here on the show before. What was the benefit, as far as this goes? Why is the government okay with all of this stuff out there? Why is the government trying to regulate this thing? Why is the government coming out with all kinds of rules on how to act in this particular area and what these companies can and can't do? The reason is that they can benefit significantly. It's kind of like the insurance industry. You've heard me say this before if you listen to the show for any length of time. Why is it that maybe, and this is conjecture on my part, I'll say it because nobody says this kind of stuff out loud except for me. But why is it that the insurance industry isn't hammered by the federal government regarding some of the products that they put out there with the annuities and things that, if you look at 401ks and a lot of the retirement plans may not necessarily be the best thing for investors? Because insurance companies are a huge buyer of treasury bills, of government bonds. If you have to have your government debt funded by somebody, whether it be a foreign government or a U.S. citizen or whatever. It would be great if you could get it funded by U.S. citizens. Why? Because U.S. citizens aren't going to pull their money like a foreign government that's mad at you. So you've heard that before, that you have these big countries out there that if they get mad at us, they could pull their money out of our treasuries. Well, if they pull their money out of treasuries, what does that do to treasury prices? It sends them down. What does that do to interest rate? It sends them up. And it could cost more in terms of the federal debt. Now, if you have a ready buyer of all these treasuries in the form of insurance companies who have sold their annuities to the public, that solves the problem to some extent. Okay, so that is why that's one of the reasons I believe that there is no push against the insurance industry. Now, how about the crypto industry? Well, let's regulate it. But how can that benefit in the federal government? This is something I've talked about as well before, but she said it out loud. Here it is.
Senator, there's an argument to be made that this could be very good for treasuries, oddly enough, because it will push the world of stablecoins even more into the mainstream. And to back such stablecoins, there'll be a bigger market to buy those treasuries. Do you see that as a positive? Do you see that as a real market? And do you see some of that also being potentially damaging to other parts of the financial system?
So you buy the treasuries, which drives the price of treasuries up, which drives interest rates down. So that's what he's saying right there. So let's listen to her answer.
I see it as a positive. There are already firms that buy U.S. treasuries that are stablecoin firms. They buy them because stablecoins need to be 100% hard asset backed. That hard asset that they're moving to are treasuries.
What she's saying there is they have to be treasuries. Why? Because you'll have stablecoin, which is tied to the U.S. dollar. It's stable. And I've told people, don't. This is, trying to invest in this because you hope it's going to go up in value is kind of dumb because it's stable. You don't want your investment stable. You want to go up in value. If you're talking about an investment for long term, you're hoping for up, right? If it's stable, that doesn't help you a whole lot. Now, the situation is if you have something that's tied to the dollar, you'll have an arbitrage that goes on. And that arbitrage makes sure that the value of the investment, the stablecoin in this particular case, is stable with the U.S. Treasury. And that's the point she's making right there.
And so we have firms in the top 20 holders of U.S. Treasuries in the world that are companies like Tether. That's very good to have an additional market for U.S. Treasuries because we're issuing a lot of debt in the United States.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. If you want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.